Yo, this is the Scarcity Studios YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And our sponsors at Alpha Claims and Hire Birmingham, the leading and best accident management company. Get a replacement car anywhere in 1 hour. This story goes all the way back to 2017. Even now in 2020, this case still isn't over. Only now are 3 people being charged with the death of Michelle Pearson, the 37-year-old mother whose 4 children died in a house fire back in 2017. She died 20 months after the devastating fire that claimed the lives of 4 of her children. Zak Bolland and David Worrell have been charged with her murder, and Courtney Briley has been charged with manslaughter. They are due to appear in court next week. Michelle Pearson died in August last year after she escaped from the devastating house fire that took the lives of 4 of her children. She was left critically ill with 75% burns to her body after the fire that tore for her Walkden home took the lives of her daughter Demi, who was 15, Lacey, who was 7, Leah, who was 3, and her son Brandon, who was 8. The youngsters lost their lives when a petrol bomb was thrown for the house on Jackson Street on December the 11th. Zak Bolland, 26, and David Worrell, 28, were charged with murder. Courtney Briley, 23, was charged with manslaughter in relation to the deaths of the children previously. And big respect to Manchester Evening News for their coverage of this story. The original trial for the death of the children took place a year before in 2019. Zak Bolland was found guilty of killing all of the children in the house after he firebombed it when they slept. They discovered in court that it was collateral damage for a bitter and violent local war that had been raging with a brother from the family called Pearson. Bolland was 23 years old and he thought of himself as a hard man, the court heard, and he had a history of picking fights, and he was also a pyromaniac who used fire to deal with rivals. They said that he didn't work and he had drink and drug problems. And he also had a violent and nasty temper. Michelle Pearson's son, Kyle, was only 16 years old at the time. All denied murder and attempted murder, but changed their pleas later on. Zak Bolland was found guilty of murdering Michelle Pearson's 4 children and the attempted murders of the survivors, Michelle Pearson, Kyle Pearson, and his friend Bobby Harris. David Worrell was found guilty of the 4 murders of the children and guilty of attempting to cause grievous bodily harm with intent against the 3 survivors. He was cleared of attempting to murder them. It was 5 o'clock in the morning on December the 11th, 2017. Zak Bolland lifted a fence panel and went up to the back garden of the mid-terrace house on Jackson Street in Walkden in Salford, Greater Manchester, and he was there to firebomb the house. He was drunk and high on cocaine, and he was armed with at least 1 petrol bomb. He walked through the garden that was filled with trampolines, a playhouse and kids' toys. As he walked up to the back window of the house, he shattered the glass with a machete and then cut the blinds, and he had a clear view inside. His friend David Worrell had a daughter himself, and he said in court this did not stop him throwing the first petrol bomb. It was made from a Budweiser beer can. It landed in the kitchen. It caused a flash of fire, but not a lot of damage. Seconds later, Bolland lit the fuse on a second, much larger petrol bomb that was fashioned from a wine or vodka bottle, and he threw it through the smashed window. A massive explosion occurred as it flew across the kitchen, through an open archway door and into the living room at the front of the house. The bottom of the stairs were engulfed in flames. From that moment on, there was no way out for the young, innocent children that were sleeping upstairs. Bolland turned and fled with his friend, Worrell, as the house was consumed by fire. In his haste to get away, he ran into a fence panel before squeezing through the gap in the fence that he had made minutes earlier. CCTV captured his movements and his accomplice Worrell as they ran from the rear of the garden just as the second petrol bomb exploded. As the 2 men got away to the getaway car, the Pearson family were waking up to a living nightmare. Michelle Pearson was sleeping on the 1st floor at the rear bedroom with her youngest daughter Leah. She was 3 years old. Michelle shouted fire and dialed 999, but the call was cut off halfway through. The fire was so intense both smoke alarms in the house had melted before they'd gone off. A neighbour heard her screaming, "No, not the children, not the kids." And Michelle managed to lift her youngest daughter Leah from the cot and carry her through to the bathroom, where they both escaped. 3 other children were sleeping in another bigger room at the front of the house. Their bodies were found in them places where they had been overwhelmed. Each had tried desperately to escape. Brandon Pearson was aged 8 years old. He would be found collapsed face down with his head pointing downwards towards the landing. His sister Lacey, 7, was behind him on the floor. Demi, the bigger sister, was collapsed on the bottom bunk bed, her feet on the floor and her hands were facing towards an open window. They were found by firefighters who crawled up the smoke-filled stairs and the steps littered with rubble which had fallen in the heat and the flames. One by one the crew carried out the 5 lifeless bodies of the children. And I have to send my utmost respect to them firefighters, because even reading this is very emotional. I can't lie. Kyle Pearson did manage to get out along with his mate, who was staying with him, Bobby Harris. The 16-year-olds managed to climb out of the small first floor box window at the bedroom of the house and onto the ledge outside. As Kyle clung onto the side of the house, he saw his older sister with her mobile. Through the smoke-filled window of the room, she coughed 3 times and then fell away from the window. He would never see her again. Kyle and his friend jumped off the ledge seconds before the windows blew out, smashing glass all around them as they hit the ground. They could see their bunk beds on fire and flames shooting around the house. Kyle shouted back in, "There's kids in there," and he pleaded with his neighbours to help him. "Please rescue my mum." He kicked the front door trying to get back in, and there was molten plastic from the door that burned his foot. The door wouldn't budge. A neighbour stepped forward and booted it again, but the backdraft blew them back and the 2 teenage boys into the garden path. Demi, Lacey and Brandon would die there on the pavement. Leah clung to life for 2 more days before losing her fight in hospital. It was an appalling tragedy, devastating a close-knit community in Walton, the city of Salford. Demi had battles with ill health during her short life, but she was a selfless star, they said, helping her mum with her younger siblings. Michelle needed the help. Her partner had died of cancer a year before the fire, while the father of the other children was still serving time in strange ways. Little Brandon was clever. He was old above his years and was going to be the next Stephen Hawkins. Lacey was a little diva, always dancing, very cute. Leah loved Peppa Pig so much and was named Pig in the Pearson household. Their mother Michelle somehow survived the terrible injuries she had suffered, and she remained in hospital months afterwards. This young family was torn apart by Zak Bolland, who believed that Kyle Pearson had torched his car 2 weeks earlier and was out for revenge. 4 hours before the fatal house fire, Bolland had been to Michelle Pearson's home and told her, "Get your son out of here, boot the door off, I'm going to break his jaw, I'm going to do your house in." Kyle heard him say that he would kill them all, and Bolland's friend Wirral hit the door with a metal pole. Michelle Pearson called police and 2 officers came and took a statement from them and promised to make regular checks of the property. Kyle would later tell police, "I didn't think they would petrol bomb the house. It's the last thing on your mind, that is." Kyle said before he went to bed that night, he wedged a loose door in the house between the front door, which had a bolt rather than a proper lock, and the bottom of the stairs. 4 hours later, as he tried desperately to save his mother and siblings from the inferno, the door wouldn't move as he kicked it because of the barricade that he'd put up earlier. Bolland and Kyle Pearson weren't always enemies, in fact. It appeared they had been on decent terms before their bust up. When Kyle Pearson's older brother Lewis and friend Luke Fleming came under threat from notorious Salford gang the A-Team, Bolland is said to have suggested how they might defend themselves by throwing a petrol bomb at their car. This was spoken about in court, and they heard that Bolland said that we should burn them out. If they get out the cars, don't give them a chance, set them on fire. It was telling evidence of the obsession with fire and petrol bombs as a weapon. Bolland is never known to have had a job, and he was convicted of beating women twice, once in September 2014 and again 2 years later. He once grabbed a woman by the throat and threatened to burn down her relative's home as well. The judge ruled the convictions wouldn't help the jury decide whether he intended to kill them when he firebombed the house. The alleged threats to firebomb a car was ruled out, as Bolland already admitted to throwing a firebomb at the house on Jackson Street. Neighbours had shown concern for the friends of Kyle Pearson, and they said that it was bringing too much trouble to the house. Kyle and Bolland had been on friendly terms, and that all changed on November the 26th when Bolland found out that the second-hand Peugeot he had just bought had been set on fire. He suspected that Kyle was behind it and sent a text to his mum's phone saying in capital letters, "Fire letterbox, I want my £500. Kyle didn't even have his own phone, and he sent the reply from his mum's handset dismissing the threat, saying he wouldn't be getting any money and that Bolland wouldn't do anything to his home, and he deleted the message and the reply. Bolland turned up later on in the day with a hammer and smashed the windows, leaving the younger Pearson kids terrified. As he swaggered away, he shouted to Michelle Pearson, "I want my £500 by 5 o'clock." So then Kyle wanted revenge, and he went round to the rival's home in nearby Black Beach Drive and described in court as a little wobble for slang as a violent bust-up. Him and his pal Bobby Harris armed themselves with golf clubs and wooden sticks and got Kyle's older brother Lewis Pearson, who was 18, and another friend Luke Fleming to go with them to the house to sort it out. Bolland came out the house and set his pit bull dogs on them. His girlfriend Courtney Briley, who had a history of using violence herself, and others came out with him. She was hit in the head and knocked out, another in a growing list of reasons why Bolland hated Kyle Pearson. Michelle Pearson reported Bolland's wrecking spree at her home to the police, and she fastened her own letterbox shut. 2 days later, a fire crew came and fitted her with a guard over her letterbox. The mother told housing officials she wanted to be rehomed. On December the 1st, Greater Manchester Police decided to take no further action in what prosecution decided as a misunderstanding over whether Michelle was willing to take the case to court. Bolland went round again to the Jackson house to laugh and gloat, saying that his case had been NFA'd, and he called them a grass. His girlfriend Courtney threatened to smash her face in. It was probably Bolland who went round a week before they said in court to set fire to the wheelie bin and spray paint gris underneath the front door, and attempt to spout grass. During the evening running up to the fatal fire, Bolland and his friends, many of whom were watching Manchester City beat United in pubs around Farnworth, were on a booze and cocaine bender. He couldn't resist the temptation to torment the Pearson family again, and so just before 1 a.m, he went round with David Worrell and 2 other pals who had been partying with him all night to threaten to break Cole's jaw again. Bolland went back to his home and slowly wound himself up into a frenzy, fearful of a revenge attack for what happened. He snorted more and more cocaine and went to get wine and a Budweiser. He asked his friend, "Shall we do it?" and his mate said yeah. Worrell said he wanted to slice his face open, and the day after the fire, a young woman called Abigail Toon would turn up at Swinton Police Station and prove a crucial witness to the court. She said that she left a works Christmas do and was with Bolland for at least 2 hours that night in the run-up to the fire. She liked a friend of Bolland's called Jordan Taylor and was willing to ferry him and his friends around in her Punto in order to find him. The police have praised her for her bravery, and she said she never found Jordan Taylor, but what she did unwittingly do was end up being Bolland's getaway driver that night. During one of the many trips that Bolland made with his associates, she witnessed him receive a message from a friend that confirmed the lads were on Jackson Street. The lads in question were Kyle Pearson, his brother Lewis, and Luke Fleming. Abigail was ordered to drive to a dark street with no cameras, close to an all-night garage, so Bolland and Worrell, with their hoods up, could buy petrol worth £1.50. They pumped the fuel into a jerry can and drove back to Bolland's house, where the petrol was put into 2 bottles and tissue was stuffed into the neck. Dressed in a fluffy pink dressing gown, Courtney Briley waited in the car with Abigail until the 2 men returned with the homemade petrol bombs. Abigail told the court she was too scared to say no. She said she knew they was doing it and they was planning it and they knew what they was going to do. She would later tell the police they regarded her as a brave witness for coming forward and that she'd done the right thing. She drove to Jackson Street, where she dropped off the 2 men. One had an axe and the other had a machete, as well as the 2 petrol bombs. Courtney Briley urged them to be quick, and Abigail was ordered to drive to a Ginnell and prepare for the escape. Abigail told the court they returned minutes later, breathless. Bolland shouted, "Go, go, go, go back to mine," while Worrell appeared to have enjoyed taking part in the attack and said that weren't real, was it? When he was interviewed and he appeared in court, David Worrell gave the impression of a tormented soul who was fearful of Zak Bolland. Sometimes he cried. He claimed that he thought Bolland would only be setting the bins alight, but the bins were at the front of the house, not the back of the house, they were told. And if that was right and you was going to set bins alight, why would you be doing it with petrol bombs? Worrell admitted to the court that he told many lies about his role. Although he maintained he was not guilty of murder, he said there was a dark side to him. The court was not told that the mother of Worrell's child had received a threat once saying that he would blow her house up when he found out she was pregnant. He didn't carry out the threat, but he threatened to blow up the house and another woman as well for an unpaid debt. The judge decided to keep this from the jury and decided they were idle threats. The mother of Worrell's daughter has since disowned him. The only female convicted, Courtney Briley, she has a history of violence herself. They were told she was convicted 3 times when she was 16 and 17 for threatening behaviour, robbery and battery. She headbutted a girl on holiday in North Wales and continued to punch her when she was on the ground, and it took 5 police to stop her. She kicked off in a police station, and the police officer that arrested her said she's the most violent person he'd ever dealt with in custody. During a WhatsApp conversation with Bolland in 2017 about a drug dealer, she said that she wished she could set the house on fire. She threatened to bang people out and batter others. A series of messages that she sent to him about other feuds that the police kept from the jury. This series of tit-for-tat escalations to the point that it actually cost these children their lives, because what you do have to understand is whatever you're doing on the street or whatever sort of issues you have, if you have children, that's who it's going to come back to. It will always affect the children. So I really appreciate you joining me today. Please pay respects to Michelle Pearson and her family in the comments. I'll be back again very shortly with some more news. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. The Scarcity Studios YouTube channel.
Yeah, people.
Peace.
He's in that van on his way. They've had him. Police have had him. Locked him up in that van outside my house. Right in there. The rotten He's in that van there. Scumbag. Horrible, horrible.
Good riddance.
Slimy, slimy, slimy person.
It's probably against the law to say, but I hope you give him a good leverage in the back of that van.
Hope he rots. Yeah, hope he gets. Just caught him outside my house, pulled him over, and there he goes, away he goes. Just as I'm walking out my door, there he was, sat there, being led away. Horrible, horrible. Take him in now. Yeah, and he's gone. We've had to get him away because he's a dead man walking. They have to send him away. They can't just leave him to get pasted. He's got to be taken away. Rat. Just thought I'd share that with you people.